Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where thoughts and prayers actually help somebody for once. Because this week we watched Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Lost of the Time Lords.
Written by Russell T. Davies.
Directed by Graham Harper and Colin T.
And aired on June 16th, 23rd, and 30th, 2007.
Yeah, so the first three-parter of the reboot, which is logistically identical to a six-part serial in the classic series. Except,
basically, with 15 minutes shaved off.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, does that 15 minutes really matter? I mean, unless you watched the original hour-long length version of Lost of the Time Lords, then it's exactly like a six-part story. Apparently, there were two versions of Lost of the Time Lords. An hour-long-ish version and then a cut-down 43-minute version. So,
well, that episode felt the least filled with content out of all three of these, so I don't know what could have been added there.
Apparently, a scene with the master dancing to a song. I went and looked up. It's pretty great. It's pretty great, actually. Should have left it in. Pretty much the best part of this whole story.
What, you mean you didn't like this? I thought this was great.
No, I actually did. I really liked this story. And I really liked the reveal at the end of Utopia, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So Utopia begins with the Doctor and Martha actually landing in present-day Cardiff again.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to be landing there a lot because it's, where the show is made.
I have a feeling they'll be landing there a lot because they don't have the budget to go other places. And the Doctor's like, yeah, just got to refill from the time vortex again. And Martha's like, there was an earthquake in Cardiff like a year ago. Was that you? And the Doctor's like,
No. What are you talking about?
And then he's like, yeah, you're running with the Slitheen, but it's all good now. We're all okay. Nothing happened. And then we cut to immediately Jack running from, I don't even know where he's running from, but he's running towards the TARDIS, yelling, Doctor!
Later he reveals that he's just running towards the TARDIS. And not away from anything, but it does seem like he's running away from something in this moment. So he runs, he grabs onto the TARDIS just as it dematerializes.
Well, the Doctor sees Jack running towards the TARDIS, and he, I guess, selectively ignores this information because he's like, okay, we're all full, let's go. Activates the dematerialization, and you see Jack jump towards the TARDIS, and you don't really know what happens, but then you see the TARDIS flying through the time vortex with Jack clinging to the outside.
Yeah. And I was like, hasn't this killed people in the past or severely injured them?
But Jack, it kills Jack. It does kill Jack.
Yeah. I didn't know the part about Jack being immortal yet. Kind of like how the writers didn't know that part when they introduced him.
Well, he got made immortal in Doomsday, I guess.
And this is one of those things that people would usually call out as a retcon, although it's not actually a retcon. It's just more information that wasn't planned from the start. So it's not technically a retcon. There's more retcon-y things later on in this, kind of.
I also don't really think it's a retcon because they just said when Rose brought Jack back to life, she brought him back to life permanently.
Yeah, so. Exactly. The thing is, people always call things like this out as retcons because they're like, well, it wasn't planned when he was first introduced, so it's a retcon, although that technically doesn't make it a retcon.
And also, the entire first season of Torchwood occurs before this episode, so
you gotta watch that to know everything.
Well, I'm just saying they probably revealed that on Torchwood first. It was probably something that they introduced.
Maybe. I haven't watched Torchwood, obviously. I haven't watched even a single episode of it.
I watched the first episode. A long time ago, though. And then we hard cut to some future people being all like, humans are coming. Humans are coming. And apparently Russell T was the reason we had to do this hard cut to future people is because if we had gone straight into the intro sequence from the scene of Jack clinging onto the outside of the TARDIS, it would have seemed really weird in the title sequence if Jack wasn't clinging onto the TARDIS since it's the same footage. So we decided to cut away so that it wouldn't look so weird.
They could have made a special title sequence, but I guess
that's
why go
what Russell
through that
T
effort?
said too, and he's like, that would have cost money.
Yeah. Anyway, the future people, they're pretty cool, I guess. Sort of Darth Maul inspired in their design.
They've got spiky teeth, which is how the humans identify humans from future people because humans have regular teeth, but the future people don't.
Do they ever explain who the future people are?
No, they're just there.
They're just there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically want to kill the humans.
They want to eat the humans. I guess because there's no food left, really. The planet looks pretty barren.
Yeah, it's kind of like Gallifrey.
They landed, and I'm pretty sure I made a note, is that a rock quarry? Because it looks like Doctor Who has returned to its roots and has started filming in rock quarries again, because it legitimately looks like a rock quarry.
Yeah, it is. It's just a nice little throwback to, you name it from the classic series.
Underworld.
Ooh, why go through the worst rock quarry serial? Why not go for, I don't know, Planet of the Daleks?
Was Planet of the Daleks really that great?
No,
could have gone for like
it wasn't.
Hand of Fear.
Oh yeah, the one that actually used the rock quarry as a plot element.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jack is dead.
Also, we should note this is the first time in the title sequence that 3 names have appeared in the title sequence instead of just the Doctor and his companion, because John Barrowman's name is in the title sequence as well as
paying attention.
David Tennant and Freema. Impossible to pronounce last name.
Not impossible to pronounce. We just don't know how to pronounce it at all.
Impossible to us.
Anyway, Jack is dead. Martha goes over and she's like, he's dead.
And the Doctor's like, yeah, just leave him. And Martha's like, isn't he a friend of yours? Like, hang on, let me get some medical supplies from the TARDIS. She runs in, she comes out with her stethoscope, and she's like, yep, he's dead. And the Doctor's like, yeah, just hang on. And then Jack's like,
the Doctor seems incredibly uncaring, considering this is Jack, that guy he thought, as far as we know, that guy he thought died and was his good friend for a while.
Well, the Doctor says later on that he ran away from Jack.
Yeah, so. Well, I mean, all of this makes sense in the hindsight of like what happens in a couple minutes, but yeah, Jack wakes up.
Yeah, and Martha's like, what the hell? And the Doctor's like, don't worry about it. Long story. And then Jack starts talking about Rose, and I'm like, Russell T, let her go.
Well, I mean, this, I think, is one of the few stories that does the Martha's just living in Rose's shadow thing sort of semi-well. Because it actually does something with it and resolves it by the end.
I was going to say, only because Martha eventually realizes what's happening and does something about it. But, like, Jack is like, oh, Rose, what happened to Rose? And the Doctor's like, she's in a parallel universe. She's totally fine. And Jack's like, oh, thank God. What about everyone else? And he's like, oh, yeah, with Jackie and Mickey, too. They all survived. They're in a parallel universe. And Jack's like, oh, hell yeah.
This is also the story where Martha realizes that the Doctor can't just go visit Rose or go back to Rose.
Yeah.
So that also sort of makes sense, I think, and is maybe something that should have been introduced earlier. I don't know. I don't know how they could have made Martha better, but they could have.
She's like pretty awesome in this story, I think, especially in Lost of the Time Lords. Yeah, she saves the world.
I mean, basically in the second half of Series 3, so I mean, like you mentioned, 42 through this, she's pretty great. Before that,
yeah, we'll talk about that because.
Yeah, we're doing a Martha.
It is March.
Martha retrospective at the end of this.
Actually, when this goes out, it'll be April. So then what happens is they
meet a guy who's running from the future kind.
Well, actually,
we've seen this guy already.
They go to like this cliff edge and they're like looking at this city that's just fallen apart, I guess. And the Doctor's like, looks kind of like a hive. Looks like it's been abandoned.
Yeah, we didn't mention that this is like the year 100 billion or something. I forget what the Doctor says.
100 trillion. Yeah, because the TARDIS starts accelerating through time when Jack grabs onto the TARDIS, and the Doctor says later on it's because the TARDIS was trying to run away from Jack as well. Anyway, they're looking at this city, and it's dilapidated and falling apart, and the Doctor's like, wow, no one lives here. And then Jack's like, well, he seems to be doing pretty poorly. He like points at this guy running away from this tribe, and the Doctor's like, wait, what?
So they go find out what's going on. They start getting chased by the future kind as well. And eventually they escape into the human settlement. And they have to show them their teeth to get in because the future kind all have pointed teeth.
Yeah.
But the humans don't, I guess. And, it's kind of weird that humans look exactly the same and that, they sort of live exactly the same and their clothes and technology are almost exactly the same as the 21st century when this is the year 100 trillion.
Throwback to when Cassandra was the last real human.
Yeah, they actually write that off in like a throwaway line of dialogue in this where the Doctor's like, humans are supposed to be gone by now, but I guess, they always come back.
Yeah, that could be considered a retcon.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, the Doctor tells the guy that he could take him to the TARDIS, and the guy's like, okay, and then they get surrounded by future people, and the guy's like, we could go to the silo, and The doctor's like, Silo? And Martha's like, Silo for me. And John Barrowman. Jack is like, Silo for me.
The guy's like, when they question what the silo is, the guy's like, it's the only place where we could possibly be safe. And they're like, oh, okay, let's go there then.
So they go to the silo and...
This is when they have to show
We've
them
actually
the teeth.
met, before this, we've met this guy, Professor Yana.
Yeah, and his assistant Chantho.
Yeah, who starts every sentence with Chan and ends it with Tho.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
Yeah, I can understand why
they killed
Yana,
her off.
I can understand why Yana goes off on her for it later, but he's... Yeah, so it's like
Well,
Chan...
it's not Yana. It's not the Yana persona.
Well,
it's...
Well, if
the other...
if human nature and family of blood is to be believed, he remembers everything from... Because the Doctor remembers everything from the John Smith persona when he turns back into the Doctor.
Yeah, but the Yana persona doesn't remember everything from the...
No. So, but when he turns back, he'll remember everything from the Yana persona. So all of the Chantho stuff.
Yeah, so it's within Blank's personality to go off, but not Yana's.
I like how we're trying really hard not to reveal who it is so we can keep the reveal. So Professor Yana calls the Doctor up. And he's like, oh, a doctor of everything. Bring him here. Because Yana is basically trying to work on this rocket ship of some sort.
Yeah, because the reason why this is called Utopia is that this settlement of, I guess, the last humans has been receiving signals from somewhere in space, and they call it Utopia, and they're like, well, wherever this place is and whatever this place is, it'll hopefully be better than here.
Yeah, because the Doctor looks up at the night sky and it's completely dark, and the Doctor's like, that's not the stars being blocked, that's all the stars have gone out.
Yeah, like that Oasis song. One of their worst songs. Anyway.
Well, that's a bit random. So, yeah, they play a lot of pop music in this story.
Yeah, it's not a good decision. It wasn't a good decision when they decided to play Toxic in the End of the World. And it wasn't a good decision here when they decided to play Voodoo Doll or whatever that song is
called. I actually
called.
really liked that song. I didn't remember that song, and I really liked it. But at the same time, I was like, this doesn't really seem to fit with the scene at all. But anyway.
I mean,
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So
they sort of meet a little kid who... The settlement is basically a refugee camp.
Yeah, because they're waiting for the rocket to be finished.
Professor Yana seems to live in luxury, so...
Well, he's the only scientist, apparently.
Yeah. But the guy who they met, who was also escaping the future kind, meets his family, and he never is important again.
Yeah, no, he was just important to get them to the silo. We see a shot of someone in the silo lurking in the shadows, and then they smile, and their teeth are all pointed, and you're like, oh no.
It's like, great job, guys. Is it really that hard to keep the future kind out?
Apparently.
Anyway, they go meet Yana.
Yeah, and he's like, wow, a scientist. And he explains his whole, like, thruster drive system to the Doctor. And the Doctor's like, I've never seen anything like this before in the history of everything.
The way he describes it, I mean, maybe I'm just trying to make sense of technobabble. But he almost describes it like one of those stomp rocket things that you play with as a kid where, like, it's just a foam rocket and you step on the other end of it and it shoots, like, a blast of air and the rocket, like, flies...
Yeah, I don't remember his exact explanation of how it worked, but for some reason I'm just remembering shoes being involved. I don't know why. That's just a persistent word in my head when I think of this rocket ship as shoes.
I mean, it was something like you stomp on something and
it was some sort of like stomp thrust reversal system or something.
It had something to do with gravity. I don't know. Maybe some of this makes actual sense and maybe some of it doesn't. I don't know, nor do I even really care.
Understand any of it, so... Although
not that it really matters.
The Doctor is impressed that Yana built it basically out of food rations and duct tape, much like the BBC builds this show, but anyway.
Or at least used to. There's some semblance of a budget now.
Yeah, so the Doctor, well, he's not really sure how the whole system works.
But then he looks over to the right and sees his cut-off hand in a jar.
Oh, no, yeah, no. Jack is like, oh, yeah, this is what I've got in my bag. And the Doctor's like, you've got my hand? And Jack's like, yeah, after it got cut off when the Sycorax came by.
Oh, yeah,
like,
Jack has his hand, not Yana.
And Jack's like, yeah, so I retrieved your hand. He's like, I did mention that I had a TARDIS tracker, and it was this. It was your hand. And Martha's like, you regrew a hand? And the Doctor's like, yeah, regrew a hand. Hello. And he, like, waves his hand.
Jack also, at this point, I don't know if it's right now, I think it was a little earlier, has introduced his vortex manipulator.
Yeah,
which
I
is
think
a
he's like, it's from when he used to be a time agent. Because when we actually met him in Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, he was a time agent from the future. Well, he used to be a time agent, but then there was that whole thing where he quit, but we didn't really know why. Because the time agents were like stealing his memory, so he didn't remember why he quit. He just remembered that he did.
yeah. I guess that's more explored in Torchwood because they don't bring it up here.
But yeah, he has that vortex manipulator, which is what he used when he was a time agent. So he used that to get off of the space station, or Station 5, or whatever it was called, in Doomsday. Not Doomsday, Parting of the Ways. And then apparently it fizzled out when he used it, and he ended up in like 1896. So he had to live 200, or almost 200 years, something like 150 years, for the Doctor to show up again. For a Doctor that lined up with him, because he lived through all of the third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh Doctor's incursions into the 20th century, especially the third Doctor, who just dicked around with the unit for a decade almost.
Yeah.
So,
but good thing he's immortal. I mean,
yeah. He also doesn't reveal yet that he was a part of Torchwood. He hasn't revealed that to the Doctor yet, because he knows that the Doctor was upset with Torchwood after the whole Army of Ghosts Doomsday thing when they brought the Cybermen over from the other universe.
Yeah. Jack actually, now that I think about it, he winds up in 1896, so he's around when Torchwood is formed, basically, though he's not a part of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
He doesn't really say what he does for those 100+ years.
I think he says something. Like,
he talks about how many times he died over those years and how he discovered he was immortal.
He said he
took a bullet to the stomach and then he woke up.
Yeah, he got in a fight with someone and they shot him. And that's how he figured out he was immortal. And then he mentions World War I and II. I don't think he actually says whether or not he fought in them or just lived through them. Probably just lived through them. But what I thought could have been cool, because this story actually ties together a lot of the previous stories of this season really well.
Yeah.
And what I thought could have been cool is if, in that World War I scene at the end of, I can't remember the name.
Human Nature? Family of Blood.
Yeah, Family of Blood. No, Human Nature, I think, was the second one.
No, Family of Blood was the second one. It was Human Nature, then Family of Blood.
Okay, well, whatever. What could have been cool is if you just sort of see Jack in the background.
The camera just panned over and was like...
Or, not even like a pan over, not even something that's like that noticeable, but if he was just sort of in the back.
Yeah.
But then they would have to, get John Barrowman for like a 1-second scene, so.
They could have filmed it while they were filming this story, maybe. I don't know, I don't think it was necessary.
It's not necessary, I just thought it would have been a cool little Easter egg.
Because this story...
And they don't even say that he fought in World War I. They just mention World War I. So.
This story does tie together all the other plot threads.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, most of them. Pretty well.
Yeah, it does.
Which I really like. I think better than the previous two series finales, actually.
Well, better than Torchwood, for sure.
Except maybe the Bad Wolf
one.
I
like this more than Bad Wolf.
I enjoy this one more, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot more, because this one, there were a lot of plot threads that you didn't realize were connected, but then, oh shoot, they actually are, like Human Nature and Family of Blood. There was no reference to Mr. Saxon in that at all, so you didn't think it was connected to the overarching plot.
Yeah, and Lazarus Experiment, or whatever it was called.
Although that one was more directly connected, since they did mention Saxon in that one, and that he was funded by Saxon, but still. Anyway, the Doctor... So they're launching the rocket, because the Doctor realizes that the rocket has a thrust reversal system, and the Doctor's like, well, no matter how the thrust reversal system is designed, it's still a thrust reversal system, so he uses the sonic screwdriver to reverse the thrust, I guess, or fix the thrust reversal system.
We also skipped all the parts where Yana starts getting headaches whenever he hears anything about the Doctor or time travel.
Or the TARDIS, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, well, we'll get to that more later. Anyway, I need someone to go into a room that's filled with radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess someone dies trying to do this.
Yeah, he does. Well, so the thing is, it's not filled with radiation, or lethal levels of radiation yet, because Jack and Martha are supposed to keep the radiation level down while he goes in there, and he basically needs to connect the power couplings. And then the future kind person destroys the power generator, so they're not able to keep the radiation out of the room, so it floods the room and it vaporizes the guy.
And that also deactivates the gates that are keeping the future kind out, so they start swarming in.
No, that happens later. Yana opens the gate to let
Yana opens the gates.
Spoiler, I guess. And they capture this future kind person, or they kill him. Her. Was it her? I think it was a her. A bit difficult to tell with the future kind, actually, with the makeup.
I don't remember their death. But
they just get shot. I don't think we actually see them die. But then the doctor, also Jack realizes they need to jumpstart the system, so he shocks himself with the cables so to use himself as, I guess, a coupling for the cable, and then he dies.
They have Jack go and do this because he's like, well, I'm immortal. I guess I can do it.
Well, he shocks himself first and dies in the room with Yana, and Martha's like, he's dead again, and the doctor's like, just let it go, Martha. And then Yana's like, he's dead, he's your friend, and the doctor's like, well, Yana, it seems that you have a room that nobody can enter because they'll die, and I have a man who can't die. And then Jack sits up like, again, and Yana's like, what the hell?
So Jack goes to get the thing started, and he has this conversation with the doctor where the doctor reveals that he left Jack on purpose because he realized that Jack was immortal.
Mm-hmm. It also kind of tying in a couple other themes that appeared throughout the season, because they were with the face of Bo in Gridlock, and then in the Lazarus Experiment, and then a little bit later in Human Nature, Family of Blood, where they were talking about the doctor being immortal and how immortality is a curse and not a blessing.
Yeah. And, I mean, the doctor's actually not technically immortal.
He's functionally immortal.
He'll die eventually. I mean, I don't know what the rules of this show are. They seem to change every once in a while, but,
The fourth
whatever.
doctor was like, I can regenerate 12 times, so at the end of his cycle, he would just die. But then Stephen Moffat was like, have a whole other regeneration cycle, so that guarantees the show through like a 20-something doctor. No, but the monster dies. Well, he dies on the cheetah planet. He dies because he becomes like that urn full of ash in the TV movie, except he wasn't really dead because then like the ash came to life and like became a snake or whatever, but he was dead. So,
well, we're counting all the regenerations as deaths.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing so far, and that decision is justified by the dialogue in this story.
It's interesting because in the very first episode of this podcast, when we were setting out the rules for the death count, we were like, we won't count the doctor because he regenerates and doesn't die. But then as soon as we got to the first regeneration, we were like, we should count the regenerations because they're technically deaths.
We also said we would only count humans.
But then
that was quickly
aliens.
thrown out.
That was thrown out like the next sentence because we were like, we'll also count aliens.
But we also started counting animals pretty soon after that.
All of the rules we established in the first episode of this show were immediately thrown out the window the next week, especially since we forgot to count the old woman in the first episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the death count's at something like 2,000 and something now, in case you were curious, with like something like 50 uncountable items, actually almost 75.
And it's probably completely wrong at this point anyway. Even more reason to start this podcast over from episode 1.
No, thank you. So then Yana's like lamenting the fact that he's basically useless because the doctor was like, if you had been born in another time, you'd be considered a genius. And Yana's like, man, all I do is try to build this rocket ship. And
he's basically considered a genius in this time too. He's basically their last hope. And they launch the rocket successfully.
But while Jack is closing the power couplings and he's having this conversation with the doctor about immortality, and it seems like the doctor and Jack kind of reconcile some of the animosity that the doctor just had towards Jack, since Jack really just wanted to get back to the doctor.
And Jack is somewhat mad at the doctor for leaving him.
Yeah, but they seem to resolve their differences now, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because they seem to be pretty good friends by the end of the story again.
Yeah.
It seems like they've moved on. But meanwhile, this is happening, and Yana's like, this pocket watch is broken, and Martha's like, pocket watch? Can I see that? And she turns it over, and it's got like Gallifreyan writing on the back. And if you had watched Human Nature and Family of Blood 2 weeks ago like we did, you're like, oh boy, here we go. I mean, even if you'd watched it like, it would have been 3 weeks ago, normally 2 weeks ago.
So this is when I started realizing, this is when I got who Yana was.
Yeah, but they tie in Gridlock to this too. Because Face of Bo's last words to the doctor were, you are not alone, which comes in just a second. But Martha realizes that this fob watch is the same or similar to the fob watch that the doctor had when the doctor became John Smith. And then
she runs out of the room suspiciously.
She's
like, what?
Everything's fine? Nope, never mind. The pocket watch is broken. Because she's like, how do you know it's broken if you've never opened it? And he's like, I just know it's broken. And Martha's like, oh shoot.
So she goes and she runs and tells the doctor what's up.
And he's like, what do you mean he has a pocket watch? Like, what do you mean? She's like, it's got the same writing on the back that's on your pocket watch. And the doctor explains to Jack that it's from a chameleon arch, which turns a Time Lord human.
And then there's a cool scene, I guess, where you cut back to the face of Bo saying "You are not alone," which Yana is an acronym for "You are not alone," which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't see that part coming.
Yeah,
I mean, as soon as he pulled the pocket watch out and they had that little discussion, I was like, oh, it's probably the master.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see the whole Yana thing coming. That was cool.
Yeah, because the way they do it is the face of Bo says it, and then the computer screens that communicate between the room that they're in and the room that Yana's in have like an analog name underneath that says the name of the person you're talking with, and so it flashes YANA on the screen
and plays
as the face of Bo says
sound effect.
Yeah, as the face of Bo says, "You are not alone," which I thought was really cool. I actually really liked that.
Yeah,
I thought it was really well done. And the doctor's like, "Wait a minute, oh no. But which Time Lord could it be? There are so many." The doctor's already figured it out. It's the Ronnie, great. The doctor's already figured it out at this point. It's Barusa. It's just someone completely...
Wait a minute. What if they bring back Barusa as a weeping angel since he got turned into stone?
I was going to say this Time Lord is just a completely inconsequential nobody. He opens the pocket watch. The doctor's like, "I've never met you before." And the guy's like,
"Yeah, I don't know you either."
No, but he opens the pocket watch and all the stuff starts streaming out, and Chantho's like, "What's going on? Yana, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And then he's like, "You insolent knave.
You insolent fool.
You and your Chan and your Tho. You're so useless." And she's like, "No, please, Yana, no." And then he shoots her.
She doesn't die yet.
No, she doesn't die just yet. But the doctor, Jack, and Martha run back. And Yana opens the gates. He closes the door to the room and he opens the gates to let the future kind in. And
this is when one door closes, another must open.
Yeah, and then he's about to go into the TARDIS, and then Chantho shoots him. He's like, "Ah, damn it!" And he goes into the TARDIS.
Yeah, but this isn't before his "I am the master" moment.
Yeah. So this is Derek Jacobi? Not sure how you pronounce it. I
Jacoby.
think it's Jacobi. Who's a pretty well-known, I guess, British actor. So
I'm not familiar with him.
So when he was cast in the story, everyone's like, "Oh, he has to be playing somebody really big, right? Because he's this proficient, I guess, actor. So when you cast someone that big of a name, you're like, he has to be someone important." So I guess if you knew that, you weren't amazingly surprised that it was the Master, but
he's not really the Master because he
immediately regenerates.
Yeah,
but he is the Master.
I thought Yana was Jack for a lot of this episode because, well, the whole headache thing when he hears about time travel and whatever, but also the actor, he looks similar to John Barrowman, I think.
A little bit.
To me, he does. And also, God, there was another point for this. I forgot what it was, but I thought he was Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was another actual good point for why I thought he was Jack, but I forgot what it was. Whatever, he's not Jack. Oh, Jack being immortal, that reveal I thought was like, all right, well, he's going to live for a really long time.
Yeah, so this might be the end of the universe. But
it's not. It's not. It's the Master.
Yeah, it's the Master. And he locks the door of the TARDIS so the Doctor can't get in. And the Doctor kind of just looks at it sadly and he's like, "Come back. You don't have to do this. We're the final two. It's just you and me." And the Master's like, "Killed by a girl. How inappropriate." And he dies and he regenerates.
Into John Sim.
Who
is another famous actor.
Yeah, the Master's like, "If the Doctor can be young and energetic, then so can I." And he regenerates and he's like, "Ooh, new voice. Whoa." He's like, "Okay, Doctor, use my name. Watch as I fly away." The Doctor's like, "Master, please don't." And he's like, "Haha, too late." And he starts flying away and the Doctor just kind of opens up the sonic screwdriver and does something to the TARDIS. You don't know what he does yet, but the console kind of explodes.
Yeah, he tries to open the door. That's part of what he's doing, but he can't. So then I guess he just does something else, which we find out.
You find out later on.
Like in episode 2.
Yeah.
But the Future Kind are almost in, and there's like 15 Future Kind trying to open the door, and somehow Jack and Martha are able to keep the door closed. I don't really know how that works.
Oh yeah, when the new Master,
armor.
The second Master talks, Martha's like, "Wait a minute, I recognize that voice from somewhere." And you don't know where yet until the next episode.
Until the preview.
Yeah, the preview gives it away, but if you didn't watch the preview, you wouldn't know until the next episode.
Yeah, this is probably the worst preview so far in all of Doctor Who. which basically just means in all of the new series because there are no previews in the classic show.
The one from the second to third episode I thought was pretty good because it doesn't say anything at all.
Yeah, this one just completely gives away that the Master becomes Mr. Saxon.
Yeah, Mr. Saxon is the Master.
Which was really lame.
Lame that it gave it away?
Yeah, lame that it gave it away. It would have worked so well if they hadn't given it away.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not even the first thing. It's early into episode 2, but it's not even the first thing. And it's one of those things where you'd go, wait a minute, is the Master? And then they would reveal it, and it would have been so good. But
well, they did put the preview at the end of the credits again, so
yeah, maybe the solution is just stop.
It's just stop when the credits end.
Like most sane people who haven't like spent 6 hours on credits for Doctor Who.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've mentioned this before, but I always watch the entire episode, including the credits. So I've done that for every single episode. So I've spent, it's not 6 hours. I've wasted something like around 3 hours, I think, just watching Doctor Who credits.
Brilliant work.
I don't even pay attention to the names either. I mean, some of them I do, but most of the time I just sort of watch them scroll.
Yeah, so I thought this reveal was done really well. Because
that the Master is Mr. Saxon?
That
Yana
is the Master.
Dual
reveal here.
Yana is Mr. Saxon.
I mean, both of them I thought were done really well, but Yana being the Master I thought was done really well, because you could start to piece it together already immediately from the pocket, as soon as the pocket watch shows up. If you remember Human Nature and Family of Blood, you'd be like, oh, is that the same? And then, I don't know, you might think that maybe Yana's the future incarnation of the Doctor, because when Martha talks with the Doctor, she's like, he has the same pocket watch. The Doc's like, that's impossible.
Which Martha, I mean, it looks almost exactly the same, so that's why she thinks that, I guess.
Maybe at first you're like, oh, it's a future incarnation of the Doctor somewhere like way down the line, but then the Doc's like, no, it must be another Time Lord.
And Yana also gets a headache when he sees the Doctor's hand, so that might also indicate that it's the Doctor.
Yeah. It's kind of like a fake out almost. It's like leading you that way, but then it's not.
Sort of a red herring type thing.
And also you might be able to piece it together by the fact that, Russell T brought back one big Doctor Who villain from the classic series each season, so it was the Daleks and then it was the Cybermen. And this season, unless you count the Macra, was a bit lacking in that department, so...
Yeah, maybe the Macro were a huge red herring.
It's possible.
Or maybe not a huge red herring.
Maybe just a small red herring. Like a little teeny red herring.
Red Lobster, since they're lobsters. Wait, Red Lobster's a restaurant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then...
What if they serve Macra?
What?
Red Lobster.
What?
And that's how they can serve lobster for so cheap, because it's not actually lobster, it's actually Macra.
You've blown this case wide open. And then the Master being like, Chantho's like, who are you? And the Master's like, I am the Master. Pretty menacing. Derek Jacobi does a pretty good job with it. Big Finish has an audio series now set around the War Master, I guess, with Derek Jacobi being the Master who fights in the Time War, which is implied later on when the John Sim Master is talking with the Doctor. He's like, oh, the Time Lords resurrected me, and then I ran away halfway through the war.
Yeah, that line was weird. Not sure why the Time Lords would resurrect the Master, but the Master's actual motivation in this was also a little strange to me, but we'll get there.
Well, so the Time War, it's more clear that the Time Lords were like desperate for people to fight in the Time War, so they were just resurrecting Time Lords left and right to fight in the Time War, and the Master was one of those people. I mean, the Time Lords have turned to the Master before, like they did in the Five Doctors, which, was Barusa going a little rogue, turning to the Master, but at the same time, they offered the Master an entire new regeneration cycle just to help them fight, or find the Doctor. Not fight the Doctor, find him.
Yeah, well, they're slowly revealing more about the Time War, which I think works.
Yeah, there was a lot more about it in this story. They mentioned like a specific battle in this story, like the Medusa Cascade, I think they mentioned in this story. So anyway, episode 2 begins. Episode 2 begins just with Jack, Martha, and the Doctor walking down the road in London. They're like, wow, really great that we got out of that place, right? And then it cuts to like a flashback where the Doctor just grabs Jack's wrist, fixes the vortex manipulator, and flies out of there, which is honestly the way I expected that cliffhanger to be resolved.
I didn't expect anything.
Because the Master makes off with the TARDIS, so they're stuck in the year 100 trillion. So.
But they make it back to 21st century Earth.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, so the Master's got to be here somewhere. And they're like, how did you know the Master would be here? And the Doctor's like, well, I just do. I always know when there's another Time Lord. I can just sense it. It's like a sense we have, sensing other Time Lords.
Since the Doctor didn't see the Master's new face because he regenerated inside the TARDIS. The Doctor never actually saw it. He's like, could be anyone though. It's going to be a little difficult to pinpoint him. And then they see Mr. Saxon, his inauguration, I guess.
Yeah, because they arrived the day after Election Day, so he's Prime Minister now. This is the second domino in the chain of dominoes that the 10th Doctor led to his own downfall when he deposed Harriet Jones. Because Mr. Saxon can only be elected Prime Minister because Harriet Jones has been ousted. Because if you remember, the 9th Doctor said she served 3 terms, and this election would have... This is a special election, I guess, to replace her, but she would have been probably in her 2nd term at this point, so Saxon is only able to seize power because Harriet Jones gets removed by the Doctor.
Yeah. It's interesting. But anyway, they see the inauguration and they're like, oh, that's him.
Yeah, well, Martha's like, that's the same voice I heard
Yeah.
in the TARDIS, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's the Master. How did I not realize it before? And he figures out later on why he didn't realize it before. But he's not, he hasn't figured it out yet. And
they go back to Martha's house.
Yeah, they go to Martha's flat.
And we actually get a bit with Mr. Saxon first. He's
taunting.
He's basically playing around with his secretaries and his cabinet members and just everyone.
Well, then he kills them all. But I was really... Because before the title sequence starts, he gives a speech and he's like, England is sick. England needs healing. In fact, what I'd say is England really needs a doctor. And then he like smiles and then it cuts to the title sequence. I don't know, I liked that. That was exactly what I thought the Master would do, is just play around with everyone.
So we find out that Tish, Martha's sister, is now working for Mr. Saxon.
Yeah.
Which is a little funny, but because you're like, wow, how did Tish get this job? But it was Mr. Saxon, it was the Master's doing.
Yeah.
He also kills all of his people.
His cabinet.
He not invites them, but they're having a meeting for his first day in office, I guess. He pulls out a gas mask from under the table, and one of the guys is like, what is that? And he's like, it's a gas mask. What does it look like? It's like, I know, but what's it for? He's like, oh, it's for the gas. So he unleashes some gas, killing them all.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know what this gas is. Instantly. It just instantly die.
The Master also has a line about how Downing Street has been rebuilt since that one time and got blown up in World War III Aliens of London. And he's like, the first meeting in the new cabinet room. Nice. Yeah, so he kills them all. And then we see now Vivian Rook, who goes to the Master's wife. What was her name?
I don't remember. We get the bit where they go back to Martha's apartment, I think, first.
I think they kind of happen simultaneously, actually.
Maybe.
Her name is...
Lucy Saxon.
Lucy Saxon. I feel bad for Lucy in the 3rd episode, but I'll get there. So, Vivian's trying to convince her that Saxon...
She's on board with the Master.
Yeah, until the 3rd episode. That's the thing. I was going to mention that there's a lot of signals and signs that the Master's been beating Lucy in the year between the 2nd and the 3rd episode.
We also skipped the part where the Master does a little drum beat as he kills everyone.
Yeah. It's actually interesting to note that drum beat is the exact same rhythm as the bass line in the Doctor Who theme.
Huh, I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
So, I think that was probably intentional on Russell T's part, but if not, it's an interesting coincidence at least.
I mean, it's not too out there of a sound of a bass line. I think I don't know anything about music, but it doesn't seem like.
No, but the fact that it's 4 beats in a rapid rhythm in nearly exactly the same time makes it pretty much the same.
I mean, it's the same, but anyway, yeah. Martha gets a call from Tish about how she got this new job, just Mr. Saxon's group or his.
Except Martha doesn't pick up the phone, so she doesn't actually know that Tish is working for Mr. Saxon yet.
Just call out of the blue, Mr. Saxon hiring her. She's like, whatever, Tish. She just deletes the message or something. They see another broadcast from Mr. Saxon.
And he says something about how, even a physician could figure it out. And the doctor's like, wait, what? And he turns around the TV and there's a bomb strapped to the TV. And he's like, oh, shoot.
This is also when the Doctor reveals that what he was doing to the Master, to his TARDIS at the end of the last episode, which is that when he found out he couldn't open the doors, he rigged it so that the TARDIS could only travel to the last place that it had been.
Which had been modern day time.
Yeah.
I get he only fixes the time coordinates and not the spatial coordinates because it can travel to London when he landed in Cardiff.
And it can travel to Utopia.
Yeah, so he says it can only travel between the place it was, which is 100 trillion, and the place it had last been, which was London. Well, present day.
2006
England.
or 7.
And so this is one of those things that makes sense if you don't think too hard about it. And Jack brings this up too, and he's like, but like, does that mean he goes to the exact same point every time? Because, okay, the Master's clearly been to Utopia and back a couple times.
At least once.
But the question is, does the TARDIS land in exactly the same time? Like, okay, basically what I'm saying is if the Master goes to sleep, and then he comes back like 3 weeks later to the TARDIS and goes to Utopia and then comes back, does it go back to that point 3 weeks ago where he first landed? Or does it come back to that point 3 weeks later? And the Doctor kind of brushes this off. It's like a flux period of like 18 months or something. And I was like, okay. But yeah, it works if you don't think too hard about it.
I mean, it works even with that. There's nothing in that idea that makes it not work.
But it's like, how confined is it? If the Master just waits 3 years till 2009, say, and then he goes to Utopia and then comes back, does the TARDIS have to come back to 2006? Or will it still come back to 2009?
I mean, we don't know, but it's not like that relevant to what actually goes on.
And it's not relevant to what goes on, but it's relevant to the Doctor's explanation, which is that he fixed the coordinates between the 2 points.
Yeah, but since it's not actually relevant to what Mr. Saxon does, then I don't find it to be that important.
I don't know. I just have a problem with it. It doesn't really make sense.
I mean, all right. I mean, it makes sense whether or not it's fixed or not. It makes sense, like with what happens in the story.
I guess.
Anyway, yeah. So there's dynamite strapped on the back of the TV, and they make it out. And Martha calls her mom.
Well, her mom
still has Saxon agents there.
Well, obviously, because they're expecting Martha to call. Yeah.
And it's only been a couple days, I think, since
and she's like,
she called in 42.
Yeah, because it was voting day. It was election day when they called, so it was the previous day.
It was the day before. So she has this... Martha's caught on to what's going on. She's like... Because I keep forgetting her mom's name.
Francine is like...
Yeah, Francine.
I'm making up with your dad. We're getting back together. And Martha's like, yeah, right, put him on. And she's like, okay, here you go. And he's on. And she's like, okay... I just need you to say...
There's no way you and Mom would be in the same room. So, Dad, is there anyone else there
Is there anyone
now?
else? Just say yes. And there's this tense moment, and then all of a sudden he just goes, yes, Martha, run!
The Saxon agents start, like, beating him.
Martha's
like, dad, the real hero of this story.
Kind of. So then Martha, they get in the car and they drive to their house, and then...
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about this, but they look up Mr. Saxon's website, which is the most unprofessional, like, website a politician could have. He has, like, this testimony section where it's just, like...
She's like, Saxon is a great guy.
It's just, like, these skater guys are like, yeah, Saxon's great, and they're like...
and Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah, and nobody gives any reason... This actually relates to the story at hand, but nobody gives any reason as to why he's great. They're just like, yeah, Saxon is awesome.
Yeah.
And like the website, it's 2007, but still the design looks like it's 1995. And
it looks kind of like that unit website. Anyway, so they drive to Martha's parents' house, I guess, and then the Saxon agents are like, take them all in. And Francine's like, what? No, we were cooperating with you. What? No. And they chuck him in the back of the van.
Yeah.
Tish is there already in the van. Actually, no, she gets chucked in a different van at Downing Street.
Yeah.
Martha and them drive up and they just turn their guns on them and they're like, fire!
There's a good chase scene because it doesn't last very long. It's only a minute or two. And it's really good. It's not overplayed. And yeah.
Okay. They get away.
Martha calls her brother, whose name, Leo. And she's like, Leo, just keep your head low for a while. And he's like, yeah, whatever.
Leo's the only one who makes it out of this. Doesn't get captured by Saxon. Maybe they just couldn't get the actor for the whole story. So I don't know. But Leo was always the one who was like on Martha's side for everything.
Yeah.
Like in Lazarus, he was like, just let her be. Maybe she found someone. Anyway. They hide in this sewer system.
Oh, we skipped the part with Rook. So this... She not in reporter, I guess, named Rook.
She's just someone who is suspicious of Saxon.
Right. She gets an audience with... She's definitely a reporter of some kind, but she gets an audience with Lucy and tries to tell her that Mr. Saxon's dangerous, that his background is completely made up, and that he just showed up out of nowhere 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that Lucy already knew all of this and is working with the Master. And we see some metal orbs, these flying metal orbs.
This is the first time we see the Toclophane.
Yeah, they're the Toclophane. The Master orders them to kill Rook, which they do. And they make her death funny with that scene with the door. They close the door and it's completely silent, and then they open it again. You hear Rook's screams of agony, and they're like, ooh, and then they close it again and it's completely silent.
Master's a little overzealous, I guess.
Yeah, I like the John Sim Master. I mean, I don't know where they go with him after this because he dies at the end. I don't know if they somehow
but
bring
the
him
Master
back.
died hundreds of times in the last series. Remember that time he burned in the fire and planted a fire? Remember that time he got crushed when Castrovalva collapsed in on him? Remember that time when he was stuck on the cheetah planet and basically supposedly turned into a cheetah person?
I mean, all I'm saying is I don't know anything about the Master from here on out, so don't spoil it. But all I'm saying is I hope they somehow bring back John Sim as the Master instead of bringing in someone else.
I mean, I'm not going to say anything about who they bring back as the Master and who plays the Master and everything, because there's a lot of good reveals around the Master coming up. But what I will say is that the classic series Master died a bunch of times and they brought him back without any explanation. So I guess what I'm saying is...
I'm just hoping they don't regenerate him that quickly.
I guess what I'm saying is don't be surprised if he shows up
Roger
again.
Delgado showed up week after week when he...
Yeah.
Not clearly, but when he was shown to have died like the last week. But I'm just hoping they bring back John Sim.
A lot of people don't like the John Sim version of the Master because they're like, he's too manic and over the top. And I'm like, but that's exactly why he's actually a good Master, is because the Master's always been like the Doctor, but like darker. So like David Tennant's Doctor is like way more upbeat, energetic, and frantic and over the top than like John Pertwee's Doctor. So like Roger Delgado's Master wouldn't really work against David Tennant. I think you needed someone like John Sim to play the Master really energetic and over the top and kind of mad, really.
Yeah, I don't think I basically agree with that. And by that same note, I don't think the John Sim Master would have worked for Pertwee at all.
No, he wouldn't have, and that's why I think it's good that they keep changing up the Master every so often, because it's good to have a Master who like plays well off of the Doctor. I mean, even though they brought Anthony Ainley back for 3 Doctors in a row, when he played the Master against Sylvester McCoy, he played the Master like a lot more sinister and menacing and calculating, similar in many ways to characteristics that we ascribe to the 7th Doctor, whereas when he was playing him against like the 5th Doctor, he was like kind of lighthearted and breezy. So there's definitely an aspect of the Master is the Doctor's, a lot of the Doctor's main character points, but put into someone with no moral compass, really. Which is why I think the John Sim Master works, and is why I disagree with a lot of people who are like, John Sim's Master is garbage. I mean, Sim's Master is definitely, the Sim Master is definitely different than the other Masters, but I think he works as the Master.
I mean, this is, I guess we'll talk about this a little more at the end, but this is one of the first times in a while that they brought the Master back, just in general, and one of the first time, I mean, obviously, but also one of the first times that they brought him back and he actually feels really dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't really felt dangerous. I mean, I would argue that in Survival he felt pretty dangerous. But before that, I would say maybe not even since Roger Delgado. The Anthony Ainley Master didn't really feel dangerous, except maybe in Castrovalva when it was revealed he captured Adric, and that like the whole city was like a fake. That was pretty good.
But even Roger Delgado, when he just kept appearing week after week, started to feel less dangerous.
Yeah, in his first 1 or 2 appearances, and then, you know, like at the end.
Like the Claws of Axos, like, oh, really?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's that thing we always mention where if you keep bringing the same villain back and you have them basically lose miserably every single time, they're not going to feel that much of a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the first times that they brought back the Master, really even since those early like Delgado days, that they've brought him back and he feels like a real threat.
Yeah, because they kind of reinvent a lot of his character. A lot of it is similar, though, and they do what I liked was that they still bring back the fact that the Master and the Doctor used to be friends, and the only thing the Doctor wants to do is try to save the Master.
Yeah, I liked how Master the audio does it a lot more than this, but we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, where are they now?
They're in the subway. The Doctor builds the perception filters out of the TARDIS keys. Apparently, Jack had a TARDIS key. I don't remember the Doctor ever giving Jack a TARDIS key, but Jack has a TARDIS key.
Does he really have it, or is it just like another one that the Doctor has?
No, he has
they
it
actually show him having it.
They show Jack handing the Doctor the key. So
all right,
and then the Doctor motions for Martha to give him hers. So.
He probably never got it on screen or anything, but.
The Doctor builds like little perception filters out of the keys, which doesn't make them invisible, but makes them unnoticeable to people.
When did Rose get the TARDIS key?
I don't remember. I don't think she ever got it on screen either.
Huh.
I think
would be weird if Jack got his earlier than Rose. But whatever.
And
Rose is clearly still haunting this podcast as well as the show.
Unfortunately, let her go, Russell T. Let her go. So then Jack, this is when Jack reveals that he was part of Torchwood because he gets a ding, an email, and he's
from
like,
Torchwood. It's actually not from Torchwood. It's like Rook emailing Torchwood, which is forwarded to Jack.
Yeah, because Torchwood right now, apparently Saxon sent him on a dead end mission to like Iceland or something.
It was the Himalayas.
The Himalayas, that's right. Sorry.
And the Master's also watching their every move via security cameras. And they're
not in the subway yet. When they come out of the subway,
they're framed for terrorist.
Oh yeah, that was before they went in the subway.
Yeah, it is. They're framed for terrorist
activities,
which is why they need to run away. Which they do.
That's why they're building the perception filters so people won't notice them and report them to the government.
Yeah. Anyway, they get this email from Rook saying like, if you're getting this, I'm already dead.
The Doctor's been noticing throughout all of this. This is relevant to what Rook reveals right now, but the Doctor's been noticing throughout all of this people on the street randomly tapping out the 4 drum beat rhythm. Like when he first lands and he notices a guy tapping it out on a cup. And later on, when he asks Martha and Jack why they would have voted for Saxon and they can't name any policy positions, he notices Martha's drumming it out too.
Yeah, that was actually earlier when they go back to Martha's apartment.
And so now Rook basically reveals that they should look into the Archangel network, and the Doctor looks into it and he's like, wow, psychic network that links everyone. That's why you all voted for Saxon, because you all just basically convinced you that he was a good person psychically.
Yeah, it's like this satellite network with 15 connected satellites that affects people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to build these perception filter things. So they use the TARDIS keys to do that. And they don't mask their presence. They just make everyone around them not notice them, I guess.
Yeah. It's like the perception filter on the watch. Why the Doctor would never notice, why John Smith never noticed the pocket watch in the office, and why he didn't know it was gone.
They demonstrate how it works with a first-person shot from Martha. And basically, when she tries to look at the Doctor, her sight just veers off. She can't really focus on him unless she really tries. And that's how it works, I guess.
Yeah, so they basically go and they watch. The U.S. decides to take over because Saxon has announced, the Master has announced at this point that the Toclafane want to make contact with Earth and England is taking charge because that's gone so well before. Throwback to World War III. And, the president of the U.S. is upset about this because he's like, well, there's apparently procedures in place with the UN and everything, and the guy's like, oh, the unit's taking over now. And Mrs. Saxon's like, okay. This is interesting because this is the fictional president of the United States, President Winters, which is only interesting because in the Matt Smith era, they very clearly state that Obama is the president of America. So, I mean, maybe this fictional...
is 2007, so maybe this is the Bush replacement.
Yeah, maybe they just are like... Maybe later on they were more okay with including real-life political figures, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know. But what's weird later is they call him the president-elect.
Oh, yeah, he calls himself president-elect, yeah.
Which is strange. When there was only one line. Every other time they call him the president. And I'm like, really? They let the president-elect do this? Not the president?
Yeah, that's the thing. You're not president till you're president. If you're just president-elect, you don't have any power yet. Anyway.
I don't know what's going on.
It's a British show written by British people.
But I mean, they still know, right?
They would know.
Actually,
Russell T would know. Russell T would know.
Well, it might have been just one of those script oversight things, but
they go to this. Well, the Master kind of looks towards the Doctor and Martha, and you're not really sure why. And later on, you find out the perception filter didn't work on the Master, which doesn't surprise, which isn't surprising because like Torchwood could see through the psychic papers. So
I mean, you get the feeling in this scene even that he knows they're there.
Yeah.
Because unlike everyone else, he looks directly at them. And in this moment, you're like, does he know they're there? Or like, can he sense them a little bit? Or what's going on?
So then the doctor...
But yeah, Martha's family is there, and Martha almost runs out and draws attention to herself, but the doctor calms her down.
Yeah, because their first plan right now is to put the perception filter over the Master, which will cancel out the Archangel network, and everyone will see him for what he really is. Doesn't work out that way. They teleport to the aircraft carrier Reliant, which is apparently the Avengers helicarrier, except a couple of years before Avengers came out. It's a flying aircraft carrier, and Jack says it was built by... Jack says it was built by either Unit or Torchwood, but I don't remember which now.
I don't remember.
I think it was Unit.
It's probably Unit.
But Jack says that he reformed Torchwood after the Army of Ghosts Doomsday incident in the Doctor's name to actually protect Earth using reasonable methods instead of like blowing up spaceships like the previous Torchwood did.
Because when Jack mentions he's from Torchwood, or that he's part of Torchwood now, the Doctor gets really mad, and he tries to convince the Doctor that Torchwood is a reformed organization, which the Doctor doesn't really believe.
Yeah, but he kind of believes it at the end of the story.
Yeah, by the end, he's more on board with Torchwood.
Yeah, because Jack says that the whole previous regime is dead. And then, so they land on the aircraft carrier and they go running through the corridors and they get captured immediately by the Master because he's like, arrest those people. And they're like, oh, shoot.
This is the next day, so they time travel and they also travel they time travel at the same time that they travel to the carrier.
Yeah, they use the vortex manipulator. And so the Toclophanes show up at the prescribed time and they're upset because they're expecting the Master. And then Saxon is like, all right, surprise, it was me, I'm the Master, I'm taking over, and they kill President Winters, and he's like, yep, I'm in charge now.
There's when the Toclophane requests the Master, Winters is like, I can be your Master if that's what God wishes.
Oh boy.
And I was like...
Kinky. And then...
Well, I mean, also sort of, I don't know, I saw this as kind of a jab at like, America, the U.S.
Maybe. Yeah, because there's that thing that's like, you have to be a Christian to be elected president. You don't have to be. It's not prescribed in the Constitution. It's just like a cultural anomaly, I guess. That.
Yeah, it's like
American voters trust politicians less if they're not overtly
Protestant, which is why JFK was like a big deal. He was the first Catholic president.
Yeah, and which is why like. When Bernie was running a couple of years ago, everyone was like, can Bernie actually win? Because Bernie is Jewish, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, a weird cultural American thing that's unique to America. Fantastic.
I don't think it's unique to...
It's probably not.
Anyway.
But yeah, then this is basically the end of episode 2. The Master ages the Doctor because he reveals that he compressed the Lazarus technology into his laser screwdriver.
Right.
And he ages the Doctor 100 years, so he's an old man now.
Laser screwdriver looks really cool. He says the Lazarus technology can be reversed to age people. Laser screwdriver looks really cool. It's bigger than the sonic screwdriver. Sort of has a yellow color scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to describe it really, but it looks cool.
It looks like a couple cylinders glued onto the end of a tube, which I know is like really that's really underselling the prop. But I'm trying to describe like the visual appearance because it looks like little metallic cylinders at the end of like an extendable kind of tube thing, but like actually done well.
So the Doctor's an old man now. This is David Tennant in
old man makeup
and prosthetics, probably.
Yeah, and then the Master orders the Toclophane to remove 1/10 of the Earth's population, and they go around killing everyone, and that's how episode 1 ends. Oh yeah, this is when they play Voodoo
Doll. I think it's Voodoo Doll.
I
don't know who this is by. I forgot.
I can look it up. Hang on. Let's check the wiki. Oh yeah, there's a scene where the Master watches Teletubbies, which is supposed to be like a throwback to when the Master was watching Clangers in the classic series.
Wow.
Also, the Master offers Lucy jelly babies at one point. So
I think it's a little late. I think it's in episode 3. Or
No, it's in
might be
episode
when they're
2.
in
It's
the
when they're
conference,
watching President Winters, so he offers her a jelly baby. Anyway, the song's called Voodoo Child, and it's by the Rogue Traders. And it has the line, "Here comes the drums." So when the Toclophanes show up, the Master's like, "Here come the drums." We forgot to mention the scene where the Doctor, Jack, and Martha find the TARDIS, and they realize that the Master's turned it into a paradox machine.
No, right. Yeah, that's somewhat important. They go inside, they see the paradox machine. Actually, I don't think they explain what the paradox machine is. They're just like, oh, look, it's a paradox machine.
Yeah, because the Doctor hasn't figured out why the Master turned it into a paradox machine yet, but he figures it out during the year that never was.
Kind of a dumb name, but,
Yeah, well.
Whatever.
Oh, well. So,
yeah, I don't know
the
how I
color
feel.
scheme is like red, and the cloister bell's going off.
And the console is caged.
Mm-hmm.
That's the paradox machine, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I necessarily agree with the use of like pop music like this in Doctor Who. I mean, it just feels so out of place.
It just feels out of place.
Especially since the music in this story is basically the best Doctor Who music has ever been.
Yeah, it is. I was going to say that.
There are parts in this that feel like or sound like John Williams-esque almost.
Yeah, like the scene when the Doctor's describing Gallifrey to Jack and Martha, we actually see a shot of Gallifrey, I think, for the first time in the reboot. We see the big city and the big glass dome, which looks way better in the reboot because they actually have a budget. And actually looks like pretty beautiful, which makes sense because that's the way the Doctor's always described it. But then you see there's like this rock quarry and you're like, this strange concept of beauty. But yeah, that piece is like one of the most famous or most well-loved Doctor Who pieces. I think it's called "This is Gallifrey" or "This is Our Home," something like that.
Yeah, but this is basically the best Doctor Who music has ever been.
I think the reason why using pop music is weird is because it's kind of anachronistic in a way. It kind of dates the series almost and feels out of place. Not anachronistic.
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 But it's not even that because, if it dates the story, then it would be like perfect for its time. But yeah, maybe that's just it. Maybe it just dates the story. But even then, I don't care so much about the dating of the story. I know I'm watching a show from 2007 and I don't care. But it just doesn't.
I think it feels out of place because it grounds the story almost. Doctor Who has always felt very science fiction. It's always felt very fictional. It's
always felt very science fiction-y, like those early historicals.
It's always felt kind of fictional except for the historicals, right? It's always felt like some sort of grand adventure that the Doctor's on. And so to hear something that's like very clearly from our world that links the Doctor Who world to the real world, I think draws you out of that.
Yeah, that might be true. That might be true.
Draws you out of it.
I really hate Marvel and DC, modern Marvel and DC movies do this a lot. And like I always mention, I'm no superhero fan, but I hate how like these modern superhero movies often use classic rock music or even pop music as well.
Mm-hmm. That may be the same thing, and maybe this is a comic book world that's supposed to feel very fantastic, and then you hear immigrant songs start blasting, and then you're kind of taken out of it because you're like, wait a minute, that's Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. The worst offender of it was when they used the Bob Dylan's All Along the Watchtower or whatever it was called in Watchmen. I was like, really?
Really? I think the worst offender was when they used Iron Man in Iron Man. Sometimes it can be a little too on the nose, and that makes it even worse. But wasn't like the Vietnam War like a big thing in Watchmen? I haven't seen Watchmen or read it, but like, wasn't like the Vietnam War a thing?
Yeah.
All Along the Watchtower is like a really famous anti-Vietnam War song, so that one I'm like kind of okay with, I think.
I guess, but like it's called Watchmen, All Along the Watchtower. It's related to it, and it's not called Watchmen for no reason. I also think Watchmen is extremely overrated, although maybe that's just because I basically know nothing about comic books. It's one of the few comics I've read. I've read like Watchmen and Calvin and Hobbes, just like a comic strip, but yeah, whatever.
Anyway, so the third episode, from what I understand, the full hour-long version, which you can only get if you buy the DVD, because all the streaming services have the 43-minute cut-down version for whatever reason. It begins with...
Well, so to buy the DVD? I don't know.
There's the scene... Well, there's the pre-title sequence, and then from my understanding, there's this scene... I watched this scene. It's glorious.
What, the 1 year later thing?
No. I watched the scene where the Master's dancing to another pop song.
Oh, you mean in the extended version?
Yeah, he's just like... let's play some music. And he's just dancing around. And then he grabs the doctor in a wheelchair and wheels him over to the window. And he's like showing him everything. He's like lip syncing along. It's really weird.
Last week we mentioned that we didn't know whether the Weeping Angels were actually played by real humans in that episode. I still don't know, but I found a behind the scenes video of later Weeping Angels, I guess, dancing, which was pretty fun. Okay. Which was pretty funny. Although I still don't know whether the Weeping Angels in Blink were played by real people, because I'm guessing these Weeping Angels in this video were from later stories where they actually move, apparently.
Yeah, probably from the Time of the Angels, the actual name of the episode.
Wow, garbage name.
They do the Dalek thing with the blank of the angels. So we learn that it's been a year, and Martha comes
by this card that says 1 year later.
Yeah. And Martha comes.
Actually, it's not a title card. It's just like an imposed thing on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, Martha comes back to the UK, and he meets up with this guy, Thomas Milligan. She meets up with this guy. I was thinking of Thomas when I made that pronoun reference. Yeah. She meets up with Thomas Milligan. The reason why I said he was because I was going to talk about Thomas Milligan for a second, because he's played by this actor named Tom Ellis. And I didn't recognize him at first. And then I was watching, and I was like, wait a minute, he looks a lot like, oh, that's Tom Ellis. Tom Ellis plays Lucifer in the Fox series Lucifer right now. Every time I watch
Lucifer in Lucifer.
Yeah, I know, brilliant. Every time I watch Lucifer, I'm like, man, Tom Ellis would play a really cool master. And then now I just realized he's already been in Doctor Who, and I'm like, dang it, he's already been in Doctor Who.
No, that's not that
stopped them before, so they could still do it. He's actually like a pretty good actor. He's like really good in Lucifer. He's basically what's holding that show together.
Is Lucifer even good? I think
good because of Tom Ellis. He's holding that show together. He's carrying that show on his back, and he's doing it fantastically. So
there's some dialogue that explains what's happened in this past year. Basically, the human race has been enslaved, and even more of them have been wiped out. Mm-hmm. And the entire world is controlled by the Master and his Toclafane army.
Yeah, we forgot to mention at the end of the last episode, this big rift opens in the sky and Toclafane come pouring through.
Yeah, 6 billion of them. I think at one point Tom says the word Toclafane, and Martha tells him that that's not their actual name. It's just something the Master made up.
Yeah, because on the spaceship, the Doctor asks what the Toclafane are, because Toclafane was apparently a Gallifreyan legend, like the boogeyman, just told the kids to make them scared.
And the Master says that if the Doctor knew, it would break his heart.
Yeah, and apparently now the Master indicates that he knows the Doctor's figured out what
he's told the Doctor.
Well, I think he didn't actually tell the Doctor. I think he knows that the Doctor figured out what it was, because he says, ever since you figured it out, you haven't said much, have you? The Doctor's like, I've only got a few things to say to you. And the Master's like, no.
Yeah, the Master's keeping the Doctor on the aircraft carrier thing, which is, I guess, where they just control the world from now. And the Doctor's sort of in a wheelchair, and he's just looks extremely depressed, and yeah.
Yeah.
So Martha and Tom make their way to...
We forgot to mention that Martha actually teleported out with the vortex manipulator. That's a key plot point that explains how Martha's down on the planet.
Yeah, that's how Martha made it out. And what Martha's been doing over this past year is going to various places in the world.
And ostensibly looking for a weapon.
Yeah.
To kill the Master.
Yeah.
That's what she's doing. The Doctor actually whispers something to her before she teleports out, because she doesn't want to teleport out, but something the Doctor says makes her teleport out. And yeah, meanwhile, on the ship, all of Martha's family is like enslaved, I guess. They're like cleaning and serving the Master food and stuff.
And Jack is being kept in chains.
Yeah.
It looks almost similar to the scene in Dalek, where the Doctor's being kept in chains. Yeah, that was in Dalek, right?
Thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was. And they have something planned for 3:00. They try to... Well, so they do this thing. Jack escapes at 3:00.
Oh, right. Yeah, this.
Jack escapes. They make it to the thing. The Doctor grabs the Master's laser screwdriver and turns it on the Master, but the Master's like, isomorphic control can only be controlled by me. The Doctor's like, well, it was worth a shot. I don't really know why he attempts this.
Just
probably
to fake
buy
out,
time.
to make the Master lower his guard, maybe, like almost as if he was actually trying here, and the Master is like, no, you can't do that.
Well, so then the Master sends a message to Martha, who has met up with this professor lady. And I was
Doherty.
Dot. I couldn't figure out. I feel like I recognized her too. Is she the flight instructor from the Harry Potter movies?
No.
No,
Because
I don't
I
know
know
where I
because the
recognize her
flight
from.
instructor has been on Doctor Who before, and it's not her.
I recognize this lady from somewhere too, but I don't know where. Oh well.
But they meet up with her. She's like, "So you're the famous Martha, right?" Because Martha is basically a living legend at this point,
Yeah.
and she's used the God, what are they called, the TARDIS key device thing.
The perception filter.
Yeah, the perception filter to go unnoticed. That's how she's made her way around the world, safe when the rest of the human race has been enslaved.
Yeah.
And human civilization has just fallen apart. They say London is full of wild dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, so they get this message from the Master where he blasts the Doctor. He basically, I don't know, suspends his ability to regenerate, so all 900 years of his life are suddenly dumped onto this one body.
And he turns into a shriveled little old dude.
But the camera doesn't show him. So it's supposed to be implied that like maybe he's dead, but Martha knows that he's still alive by the Master's reaction.
Yeah.
As the Master kind of looks at him and is like, damn it. So Martha knows that the Doctor's still alive.
This is when Martha reveals that she has three of the four pieces she needs to complete the weapon that can kill the Master.
4 of the 5 if you count the gun itself as a piece.
All right, fine. She pulls out the gun, and the prop for this looks pretty bad. Although I guess it makes sense because it's not even real, but
Yeah, it's not really supposed to be.
Because it's a prop in the show as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. When Martha first meets Daugherty, she has this cryptic line where she's like, "Yep, know your enemy, right?" And she's like, "What does that mean?" And Martha just doesn't really elaborate on that.
But you find out why later. But Martha basically reveals that in Johannesburg, by some random coincidence, a lightning struck a taclophane and brought it down. And Martha's got the technical readouts of the taclophane, so she gives it to Daughtry, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we could just shock the taclophane and bring him down." So they do that. It's not really worth explaining the whole scene because it's not that interesting.
Yeah, this episode, I really liked Utopia and the sound of drums because of how fast-paced they were. It kept things interesting and kept introducing new things, even the new things that didn't really feel out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
This one felt a lot slower.
I think most people agree that Lost of the Time Lords is the weakest of the 3 parts. I don't think that's... I don't think there's any contention in that assessment, and I agree. I think the third one is definitely the slowest and maybe the least content-filled.
It's okay, though. I mean, I still like the episode, and this is a year later. The Earth has been destroyed, basically. The Master's in control, and
I like the time jump.
You like the what?
I like the time jump.
Oh, yeah, I like the time jump. But it's still, I mean, it kept me interested because you're like, all right, the Doctor and Martha are going to have some plan up their sleeve. Mm-hmm. And it's going to come to fruition in like the last couple of minutes. So, what is this going to be?
Yeah. Well, so Martha and Tom find out.
It's just the ending of Dragon Ball Z. This is the exact ending of Dragon Ball Z, but
never watched. Whatever. I watched a couple episodes, but I didn't. Anyway, they open up the taclophane and they find out it's a human inside at the same time that the Master is talking with the Doctor about something. And
yeah,
this is kind of creepy.
Yeah, and the face, it's a face inside the taclophane. It sort of has some sort of breathing apparatus, kind of like Plo Koon from Star Wars. That was the name I couldn't think of however many weeks ago.
Oh, God. Brilliant. And
it says a line that little kid in Utopia said.
The skies are made of diamonds.
Yeah, and Martha's like, "Oh, God. Oh, God." Yeah, and so this was really cool because you think they just threw out the whole thing with Utopia, which was all right because it was a cool setting and stuff. You think they just threw it out, but they didn't. They brought it back for this.
Yeah, this is when Martha figures out what the paradox machine was for. The Doctor's already figured it out, and that's how he figured out what the taclophane were. But the paradox machine, basically, because the taclophane are humans in the future, and they're killing their ancestors.
Yeah, this is what happened to the people who went to Utopia. Because the Master went, before he came to Earth and created the Mr. Saxon identity, he went to Utopia.
Right. And, while he was there, he turned them into the taclophane and saved them because apparently the universe was dying and there was nothing at Utopia, apparently. And so they need the paradox machine to keep the taclophane around because they're killing their ancestors. So that's why the Master made the paradox machine. And
Martha or someone in this scene is like, "But wait a minute, you guys are humans killing your past selves. And they're like, yeah, it's fun.
You're like, okay. Because the Master says they regress to like a childlike state in Utopia, trying to, I guess, avoid the reality that the universe was collapsing around them.
Yeah.
The Doctor also stays away from destroying the paradox machine in episode 2 because he doesn't know what it does, so he doesn't know what to remove. But I guess in episode 3, since he's figured out what it does, he's just okay with Jack gunning it down. But anyway, we'll get there.
I still don't get what the paradox machine even does. I mean, how does it...
It sustains the timeline because if the humans from the future kill their ancestors, then the humans in the future won't exist. So the Toclafane won't exist, so they won't come back to kill their ancestors. So the paradox machine
makes it possible
for the Toclafane to kill their ancestors.
But sure.
And that's why time reverses when they destroy the paradox machine, because the paradox unravels.
All right, why not?
I don't know. That's like the least egregious thing of this. Actually, that's not even egregious at all to me.
No, it's not. It's not egregious at all to me either. It's just
the only thing that I could potentially find egregious is the psychic restoration of the Doctor, which kind of came out of nowhere, but we'll get there. So Martha goes to London to try to find the final piece of the gun, allegedly, and Daughtry.
Well, actually, no, they're not in London. They're in somewhere.
They're in England somewhere.
But she stays in like these. Tom actually says not barracks, but it's just a converted apartment. It's housing like 100 people.
They look a lot like that. It looks a lot like that street Mickey's grandmother lived on in the alternate reality.
All right. Anyway, yeah, there's like about 100 people crammed into this single apartment, and Martha starts telling the story of the Doctor.
Yeah, and how he saved them so many times, and he never stays for you to say thank you.
Yeah. And that he saved them more times than they could even know. Because
and then, I guess Mr. Saxon and his secret police show up.
Yep.
Because Daughtry calls Mr. Saxon's like, I have information regarding Martha Jones.
Yeah, so she's a sort of a double agent.
And then Tom just does a kamikaze charge towards Saxon out of the door when they're about to kill Martha and just gets gunned down in the street.
Well, Martha tries to hide first. They're like, you have to hide, you can't let the Master kill you. But eventually Martha decides that she needs to go out because otherwise the Master will just start shooting indiscriminately.
And also that's what the Doctor
his
would
guards,
do.
Not the Master. And it's what the Doctor would do. The Master sort of baits her out actually by saying, do you really think the Doctor would stay hidden when I'm about to kill all these people? But yeah, then Tom does his suicide charge and
dies. It's okay. Yeah. He survives because time reverses, remember? So
yeah, I guess all the people who just killed themselves when the world started going to hell just lucked out.
Oh, God. That's a dark thought.
Anyway, Martha comes out, and the Doctor's like, or it's not the Doctor, the Master is like, throw me the gun. So she does, and he destroys the gun.
Yeah, so they go up to the ship, and apparently all these rocket ships the Master's built, they're going to fly out into the heavens. The Master's just going to conquer these species that won't even know Earth is coming, and he's going to start a new Time Lord empire, and the Doctor's like, stop.
This was cool. This is a reversal of a lot of what Doctor Who has done in the past and what a lot of science fiction shows do, I guess, is that the humans are now the one, or the Earth is the threat to other places, right? Most of the time, aliens are far more advanced than we are in stories.
Star Trek, I think, does this really well, actually. Star Trek has a concept called the mirror universe, where it's like our universe, except all the good guys are evil because of like a slight change in the timeline. And in that universe, the humans, instead of being part of this like Federation coalition of planets, the humans are actually these aggressive warmongering people who have subjugated and enslaved all these other alien races.
The Federation from Blake 7. That's kind of lame, though. It's just some sort of black and white thing where it's like good and evil.
The original series is like really black and white with the Mirror Universe, but they do a lot of really cool things with the Mirror Universe later. In Deep Space Nine, the Terran Empire has collapsed because Spock takes over and tries to instigate reforms, and then they get conquered. And in Deep Space Nine, the Terran Empire is now the Terran Rebellion. In Enterprise, they do a lot of interesting things where there's a lot of power struggles in the Mirror Universe where the only way to ascend through the ranks is to kill your superior. So there's a lot of killing your superior, and then trying to stage a coup to take over the empire. But then there's like ships from the future trying to stop them. They do a lot of interesting things with it. It's not as black and white as it seems.
All right, sure.
But it's interesting because in that the humans are portrayed as the Galactic Empire, the Terran Empire they're called. Their logo is a sword stabbed through the earth. So the Doctor's trying to get the Master to stop, and he's like, no, what are you going to do about it? And he's going to kill Martha right as the rockets launch, and then Martha just starts laughing. He's like, what? And she's like, did you really think I was going to kill you? And the Doctor's like, yeah, did you really think I was going to ask her to kill you? And the Master's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, actually. What's going on?
Anyway, there's like the implication that it's like actually like a really heavy implication that the Master and Lucy are in like an abusive relationship, because the first time Lucy shows up in the second and third episode, she has like a bruise around her eye that's not really explained.
Really? I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah, she's got like a pretty prominent bruise around her right eye. Huh. And her eye is actually bleeding later on. Her nose is bleeding later on. The next time she shows up.
I didn't notice any of this.
The Master makes a lot of like snide comments about getting massages from the woman on the ship, and Lucy kind of just looks dejected and broken down. And that's I think that's probably why she shoots him later on.
Well, also his control over the human race is broken.
Yeah, so Martha reveals that her plan all along was, at the instant that the countdown stops, for everyone on Earth to think about the Doctor, and then because the Archangel network is psychic.
Yeah, so if everyone thinks the same thing at the same time, they can all break it. And what she's really been doing, traveling the Earth this entire time, is spreading the story of the Doctor and telling people to think about the Doctor. Yeah,
so the Master at first is like, what, that's your plan, thoughts and prayers? And then Martha's like, yeah, thoughts and prayers amplified by 15 satellites you have in space. And then you can just see John Sims' face go from yay to oh, shoot.
So that happens. Everyone at the exact right moment thinks about the Doctor, and he's restored.
Yeah, he's like, I've had a year to tap into your psychic network and infect myself.
This was kind of lame, but that line sort of made it better to me. Like, the Doctor's shown to have some psychic abilities before, so if he can tap into the network, I guess that's why he gets revived.
I guess it's still a little
Yeah, it didn't ruin the episode for me.
I just don't think it lands.
It's kind of a, I don't want to say it's a cop-out, but
it's a bit hasty.
Yeah.
Is the thing. Which it doesn't necessarily mean it's a cop-out. It's just hasty.
It's also the exact ending of Dragon Ball Z, but there it makes a lot more sense based on things that I'm not going to get into because it's too hard to explain. Not too hard to explain. It'll take too long to explain.
Okay. Maybe they stole it from Dragon Ball Z. Maybe Russell T didn't realize he'd been watching Dragon Ball Z.
I don't think that's the case, but I mean, it's not that hard of a concept. It's a collectivist concept. You know, the person who saved the Earth before now has to get help from everyone he saved in order to save the Earth again.
Yeah. And I don't know. I do think that's kind of a nice reversal, though, of roles. And the Master's like, no, you can't do this. It's not fair. And the Doctor's like, that whole year, all those days, you wouldn't let me talk because you knew what I'd say. And the Master's like, no. And the Doctor says, I forgive you.
Yeah, Master's like in the fetal position.
He tries to run away, but they capture him. And he tells Jack to go destroy the Paradox Machine because the Toclafane are launching to go destroy everything.
Jack is actually the one who captures him. The Master tries to run out, and Jack just appears. And he's like, nah.
First the Master and the Doctor teleport down to the planet, and they have this like survival-esque scene where they're squaring off against each other.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And the Master, this is actually cool foreshadowing in this scene because the Master's got this remote that'll detonate all the cores of the rockets and destroy Earth. And the Doctor's like, the one thing you can't do is kill yourself, so just give me that. And then the Master's like, yeah, I guess you're right, here you go. And then they scuffle for a bit and they teleport back up, and then that's when he gets captured.
Yeah.
That's nice foreshadowing for what the Master does at the end of the episode.
So Jack sort of detains the Master. The guards, I guess, the Master's guards were, I guess, completely under the control of the Archangel network because now they take orders from Jack.
Yeah.
And this is when Lucy shoots the Master.
Yeah, because Francine's going to shoot him.
But she doesn't.
Because the Doctor's like, you're better than him.
And the Doctor tells the Master that from now on, he's going to stop traveling. He's going to take responsibility for the Master, who's completely unhinged. We also didn't mention the drumbeat backstory thing, but we'll explain that in a bit, or discuss that in a bit. But he's going to keep the Master in the TARDIS, basically, and watch over him. Make sure he doesn't do anything bad anymore.
And then, so Lucy
She's
shoots
like,
the
oh
master.
man, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
And then Lucy shoots the master, and the doctor, the master falls in the doctor's arms, and he's like, all right, regenerate. He's like, no.
The doctor's like, no, don't do this to me. And the master's like, haha, look at that. I've actually won.
So he's refusing to regenerate, which is, I guess, the only thing the doctor just can't stand.
Is losing the master,
Yeah,
especially since they're the only two people left. There's 2 Time Lords left.
Yeah, and this death actually, it really got to me, because, I mean, I don't know, the master just finally... I was wondering how well this would land if you had only watched New Who and not known about, or maybe known about, but maybe not experienced the relationship between the doctor and the master.
Yeah.
Because this is just a masterish thing to do where, like, he loses, but, like, in the end he wins, because, you know. And this actually, I don't know, it really landed for me. Most of the emotional stuff in Doctor Who just, I don't care about. This I actually did, though. Because it was these 2 established characters who'd been fighting for, you know, however many years. But, I mean, if this was your first introduction to the Master, would you even care? I don't know.
I think there's a scene between the 12th Doctor and another established character later on that's going to land pretty well for you then. It landed really well for me, but that's not for another year till we get there. So, but based on what you're saying, that'll land probably pretty well for you.
Sure.
This didn't land so well for me just because I think I was just tired by the end of it. I was very tired when I watched the 3rd episode yesterday, and I was barely awake when I was watching it, so I did force myself through it, though. And then, there's a lot of wrapping up stuff after the Master dies, and the Paradox Machine reverses time to the instant before the Toclafane arrives, so the Toclafane don't arrive.
But everyone at the Eye of the Storm, the Doctor calls it, so everyone on the ship basically remembers. Yeah, remembers the other.
So there's a lot of wrapping up stuff. They take Jack back down. He says, the Doctor offers to take Jack with him again, and Jack says, no, I gotta defend the Earth with Torchwood.
There's a funeral pyre for the Master. The Doctor lights I don't know what you call those things. It's just a pyre.
Yeah.
Then
at the very end, there's a scene where a lady's hand picks up the Master's ring, and you're like, who could it be?
Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, there's the scene with the Doctor and Martha and Jack, and the Doctor assumes that Jack is just going to come with them again. Jack's like, nah, I got responsibilities here. Got to protect the Earth with Torchwood. And this is when the Doctor, I guess, comes to terms with Torchwood being a benevolent organization now.
Yeah, because Jack's running it.
Yeah, he trusts Jack.
And then Jack reveals, this is the best reveal of this whole story. Jack reveals that when he was in pilot school as a young lad training to be a time agent, he was such a good pilot, they used to call him the face of Bo. And then he walks away, and the Doctor's like, no. And Martha's like, no. So that, I mean...
Pretty sure it's just a coincidence. I don't think he's actually the face, but no.
It's designed to be a reveal in such a way that if you don't want to believe it, that he is the face of Bo, you don't have to believe it.
No,
but I believe it.
Yeah, I believe it.
It explains why the face of Bo knew that the Doctor wasn't alone, which is something that, you wouldn't really know, especially since Yana was at the end of the universe 100 trillion years in the future.
Yeah.
It also, I mean...
Could
assuming that it's
massive coincidence, though.
Assuming that it's true, made the face of Bo's death land a lot more for me earlier this season.
Yeah, this is something where once you've watched this, you want to go back to all the other Face of Bo stories, which I guess is just End of the World and New Earth.
New Earth
and Gridlock, and see are there any hints about this or what dialogue falls into place now that you know he's Jack, but.
I mean, the You Are Not Alone stuff definitely falls into place.
Oh, yeah.
I just think it's nice. I like it.
I guess Jack then appears in the 2nd episode of New Who.
I also like it because Jack was concerned about ever actually dying. He was like, will I ever die, Doctor? And the Doctor's like, I don't know. He's like, also, I keep aging, but I'm not dying, so what's going to happen with that? You're going to turn into a massive face, Jack. That's what's going to happen.
And then, sometime later, I guess... Martha is hanging out. She's in her family's house, and the Doctor's in the TARDIS outside, and there's this unspoken reconciliation between between Francine and the Doctor, where Francine just looks at the Doctor and I guess just accepts that he's a good person.
Yeah, the story kind of does bring in also those plot threads that we've been talking about, where Russell T's been trying to introduce this idea that death follows the Doctor wherever he goes, and that may or may not affect his standing as a quote-unquote good person, so to speak. But anyway.
But I mean, I think Francine just realizes that she'd been in the wrong for, she'd been working for the Master, who was
a genocidal maniac.
Yeah.
So Martha comes into the TARDIS, and now we get Martha's departure scene, where she basically tells the Doctor she doesn't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, she brings up this anecdote. First she just leaves without any fanfare, basically.
First she tells the Doctor that she spent a lot of time thinking she was second best, but she's pretty great. And the Doctor's like, yeah, you're fantastic.
And that she needs to stay behind for her family who witnessed something that no one should have to witness, and realized that while they were trying to help her, their hearts were in the right place, but they were basically working to destroy human civilization, basically.
She also says that she's been training to be a doctor, and she finally has the opportunity to go and be a doctor, so...
Yeah.
But then she comes back, and she tells the Doctor this anecdote about her friend who was completely in love with this dude she lived with. And the dude didn't even really notice her, and she kept telling her friend, like, you gotta get out, you gotta get out. And then Martha's like, so this is me getting out, and this is when I think the Doctor realizes what's been going on. He seems a little sad, and she's like, you'll be okay, right? And he's like, yeah, I'll be fine.
Well, this was a nice wrap-up to Martha's character.
Yeah, I like that Martha went out on her own terms.
And this story, with Martha realizing that Rose is trapped in another dimension in this story, and the Doctor can't even see her.
Yeah.
I didn't even... What?
Let it go, Russell T.
Well,
next season, let's go, boys.
Well, Donna's
no
coming
spoilers,
back.
but let's go.
But I mean, I think I didn't realize this all the other times that I criticized Martha's character. And don't get me wrong, I still don't like what they did with Martha in the first half of this series. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize that Martha didn't really know or even realize that the Doctor couldn't just go visit Rose whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
Until now. Which sort of, in hindsight, paints her character in a different light.
Little bit, yeah. I just like that Martha went out on her own terms.
Yeah.
The Doctor didn't kick her off or something. Or she left on her own terms to be a doctor, and also because she realized that this non-existent relationship wasn't healthy for her.
Existent.
Or the Doctor, and wasn't existent, and it wasn't fair to herself to keep herself there, so...
Yeah, I think this was a strong write-out for a character who has had a lot of potential, and they finally were actually doing things with in her final stories, but didn't really execute in a good way, or in a way that I liked early on.
Yeah, well, I guess we should just launch straight into the Martha retrospective with this. I think that, yeah, she had a lot of potential, especially when they introduced her in Smith and Jones. She was training to be a doctor. She was, in many ways, the Doctor's equal. They kind of squandered that a little bit, immediately starting with the Shakespeare Code and Gridlock. She started just to be a bit of a Rose clone. And
again, I don't necessarily think romance has a place in Doctor Who. Maybe that's just me having
cynical old heart.
No. Maybe I mean, I think a lot of people who grew up with the classic show or watched the classic show first, like me, think this because there was never really romance in the classic show. It just never was really a big thing. And having it be such a huge part of the new series is a little jarring or not.
Well, the good news is we're kind of over the hump, I think, of most of it. There are speckles here and there of it here on out, but I think we're basically out of the romance.
We're out of the woods now.
And yeah, I think the reason why the romance didn't work at all is just because
it's teen romance.
It wasn't done very well, yeah.
It's a high school comedy.
The Doctor and Rose were supposed to be star-crossed lovers, but it didn't land very well. And Rose kind of, because of that, she got really diminished as a character because that became much of her character was, I love the Doctor and he loves me and Rose will be together forever.
Rose was done well in Series 1, and Rose was basically done at the end of Series 1.
Yeah. And Martha, I think...
is basically done here, and they actually write her out here instead of keeping her on. Although I can understand from a TV-making perspective why they kept Rose on for another season.
Martha does give the Doctor her cell phone and tells him that it will ring and she will bring him back to Earth at some point.
Yeah, hoping she actually lives up to that. Because I'd like to see Martha come back for a one-episode thing.
I'm not going to say anything.
Anyway, the Titanic crashes into the TARDIS. Or the other way around, I don't know.
I was also going to say that this really drives home that point that I really dislike Rose because of what happens to Martha, because I think Martha's unrequited love is while it's
Rose
bad,
didn't even meet Martha.
While it's bad, I think it's worse because it follows right off the heels of Rose, and then we never let go of Rose. The Doctor never gets that. The Doctor never gets that closure, I guess, because now he's got Martha who's in love with him. We never get closure as an audience because now it just feels like we launched straight into Rose 2.0.
Well, don't get me started on closure. Closure is one of my least favorite words and concepts, but I'm not going to go into my rant about it, especially since this episode is already an hour and a half long.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I like Martha aside from the romance, I guess. The romance really brings down the character.
Yeah, which was a big part of her character, so she's sort of brought down by it.
Like, I like post-42 Martha pretty well. I also like Martha in this episode, especially because she's really awesome in this episode. Yeah, the Titanic crashes into the TARDIS, but not the Titanic you would expect.
Huh. Well, I guess I'll find out next week. I didn't think this episode needed this ending, like as a cliffhanger for the next season.
It's the same thing that they did with Doomsday, though, when Donna showed up in the TARDIS.
Yeah, it is. And since that episode wasn't as good as this, maybe you needed something to incentivize you to keep watching. Whereas if this just ended on more of a somber note, you might be like, "Wow, Doctor Who is really good."
Well, it's like tying it in with the Christmas special, I guess, because the next story is the Christmas special.
All right.
The next story is the one where Kylie Minogue takes the place of the companion in the story, but I didn't want to spoil that earlier because it would have spoiled that Martha leaves in this story. And we're also going to watch, for next week, we're going to watch Time Crash, which takes place like in the final minutes of the story.
Yeah, it's a sequel to Time Flight, so we got the flight, now we're getting the crash.
Between when Martha leaves and the Titanic crashing into the TARDIS, the 10th Doctor meets the 5th Doctor.
Yeah, this is kind of a retcon thing, because there's no time between when Martha leaves and the Titanic crashes. There's no time between it. We see that there's no...
Oh, you'll see. Just watch Time Crash and then make your determination.
All right, sure. I want to bring up a couple things we completely glossed over in this episode.
Okay.
Like the Master's backstory, which is that, I guess before entering the Time Lord Academy, or just as children, the Time Lords
as part of the Time Lord Academy.
Yeah, the children are brought face to face with the Time Vortex.
The untempered schism.
and some people, it doesn't affect, I think, and some people it drives crazy, and some people just run. The Doctor says he's one who never stopped running. It's also sort of a retcon for the Doctor.
Well, no, we've always known that the Doctor ran away from something. Well, yeah,
but
ran away.
But there were other circumstances, and there were other circumstances for the Master and the Doctor's childhood, like in Master, where they kill a person.
So the drumbeat, no spoilers on whether or not it's John Sims' Master who returns, but at some point we do find out why he hears the drumbeat because he looked into the untempered schism. That is something that is information that is told to us. We do find out why he hears a drum beat.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I mean, obviously it's something that is made up here, but it's interesting that, like, Roger Delgado and Anthony Ainley didn't have this drum beat. Why not?
Yeah, some people really dislike that idea that the only reason why the Master is evil is because he's had this drum beat in his head for hundreds of years.
Well, I mean, I think the drum beat is a product. The drum beat and the skewed morality is a product of looking. They're both products of looking into the vortex and going crazy. I don't think it's the drum beat driving him crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of a misreading of it.
Well, it depends how you read it when we find out why he hears the drum beat.
Yeah, sure.
Because that may change your opinion on it. But yeah, we see the young child Master. I don't think actually necessarily that this and Master are irreconcilable.
No, they're not. They're not. I just like what was done in Master far more than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do too. What else did we gloss over in the story?
There was one other thing I wanted to talk about. I forgot what it was now. I remembered it like 5 minutes ago, but I can't remember what it is now.
Season retrospective. Human Nature Family Blood is definitely my favorite of this season.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I don't think we basically talked about this season already in this episode. And again, this is a long episode, so I don't think we need to go too far into it. 42 I think we can just do favorites or least favorites, something like that. 42 is my favorite. Again, it's in my top 5 Doctor Who stories. This was also really good. And yeah, you were right. 42 through this is basically really good.
Yeah, definitely a strong run of stories. What was my least favorite? Probably Daleks in Manhattan, Evolution of the Daleks, actually. Because I really liked Gridlock. And Lazarus Experiment I consider marginally better than Evolution of the Daleks. So
I think Shakespeare Code was probably the weakest for me. It didn't really play into this, didn't play into the whole the season as a whole, and sort of historical almost. And I never liked the historical stories as much as the other ones, so.
That's fair. Yeah. A good end to the season, tied up a lot of the plot threads, and overall, I think, good episodes.
I like the season. The ending, the final few episodes redeemed it for me, so it's not totally bad like I was saying it was.
Yeah, definitely a lot better than Series 2. Like I said, Series 2 is definitely the low point of Russell T's of tenure, in my opinion.
Well, we only have one Russell T season left.
And then the specials, so... yeah. This was a rather long episode, but that was to be expected, I think. You can email us at thedoctor@decorativefestival.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Martha, now that she has departed as a companion. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Voyage of the Damned. But until then, the end.